learning to sacrifice. And this one to me this is the absolute hardest thing that I've ever done as a father, as a husband. If you want to be a good one of those, the whole thing is your willingness to sacrifice. The better father you are, the more you're willing to sacrifice. That doesn't mean you have to be sacrificing all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But you do need to be willing to sacrifice. So I have a few quotes here. The quote from Socrates, whom I love. Well, I guess I don't love him, but I really, really like Socrates. The unexamined life is not worth living. And what that means is that we must understand who we are and why we are here. Because if you don't take a look at your life and who you are and what you like, you're more than just your job. You're more than just your kids. Who are you? Are you, when you come home, and you need to be really aggressive when you do this too. Like you need to be able to hurt your own feelings. I, in the past, have been the type of person who would get off work. I would come home. I would pull my phone out. We would get Chipotle or something. We would turn the TV on and we would sit there for 4 or 5 hours and then we would go to bed. That is not a life worth living. It's not a life worth living, and because it was an unexamined life. So you need to know who you are, why you're here, what's your purpose. To me, my purpose is I want to help people the best I can. I want more people to become dads. I think being a dad is the greatest decision I've ever made. I want to help people with their finances. I want to help people create more. I think people should make more. I mean, obviously you can tell based off what I'm talking about. And I think that I'm best suited to help young men because that's who I was, that's who I currently am, and that's who I think I can help the best right now. And so you have to figure out like what your calling in life is. and it's hard. Like it's hard to know what that is. I think most people are called to be parents. I think a lot of people turn away from that, but I think most people are called to be parents because there's getting hugged from your child is unlike anything else you've ever experienced in your whole life. No promotion, nothing you make. There's just something about a 2-year-old girl running up to you saying that she loves you and grabbing you around the neck and giving you a hug. There's just nothing like that. I mean, that's what it's all for. And so, but you have to be willing to make the sacrifice to become that person. I have written down here, real love is sacrifice. You cannot love someone without sacrificing yourself to make their life better. In this case, my wife, I want my wife to not have to work. And in order to do that, I have to work a lot more. I could not work a lot more, but my wife is ultimately going to have to work probably her whole life if I choose to not work more. I'm also going to have to sacrifice. A lot of guys have toys. I don't have toys. My lawnmower is a nice lawnmower. It's like a John Deere. It's a nice lawnmower, but it was $600. I bought it used on Facebook Marketplace. I could have bought a $3,500 one from Home Depot, but I bought a $600 one because that extra $3,000 I can invest. And in the future, that will be a reason my wife can no longer have to work. So you have to find your purpose and you have to examine your life and you have to be willing to sacrifice. This goes both ways, though. You don't want to be in a relationship where one of you is bearing the brunt of all the sacrifices and the other one isn't. My wife is just as willing as I am to sacrifice. I just don't want my wife to have to sacrifice as much as I sacrifice. If you've ever read any Greek mythology or if you've watched any Greek mythology, you know about Atlas, and he's the Titan who carries the world. They lose the fight to, I believe the story goes that they lose the fight to Zeus, and Atlas is tasked with holding the planet up. And I've always thought that, to me, that's an allegory for families. That's an allegory for, that's what it is to be a man, is to hold the planet up for your family. That's what you're meant to do, and that takes an immense amount of sacrifice, and it's something that you have to be willing to do, basically, because you're not going to be able to get the nicest car. My wife drives around an exceptionally expensive car, and I drive around like a $3,000 or $4,000 minivan. And we could buy a more expensive a more expensive car, but it's just that money. While it might make my life a little bit better, 5-10% better getting a new car, it's going to harm the long-term future for my family. And I know that the sacrifice right now is worth it. So you have to be willing to sacrifice. Obviously, I'm a Christian, so Jesus, the ultimate sacrifice, he died for our sins. And so that's the ultimate sacrifice. That's like the whole Bible is basically built upon this idea of sacrifice. And finally, another thing I've written down is do not be afraid to question things, not only yourself, but the culture in which you reside in, because Steve Jobs said it best when he said, once you realize the world around you was shaped by people no smarter than you realize that you can bend it and shape it to how you desire, how you want it to be. And so if your life right now, if you're an alcoholic, if you are, you're a terrible father, you're an absent father, you're a bad husband, whatever, that's your decision. I mean, those are your choices that you're currently making, which is amazing, because that means that you could just choose to be better. And I think that that's what I like so much about life, is that most of it is just, it's up to you. Like, just choose to be better. And that's really great. Like, that's all it takes, is I just have to choose to be better. And if I just make that decision today to choose to be better, to choose to sacrifice, then my life will get better. If I choose to go to the gym and I choose to eat healthier, yeah, in the moment it might stink, but in 3 months, I'm going to have a six pack. I'm going to be in great shape. My clothes are going to fit me a lot better. My wife's going to think I look better. Like, that's better. I know that it might suck in the moment, but you have to be able to think in decades and not days. That's like my favorite saying. I don't know if I came up with that myself or I heard somebody else say it, but you have to be able to think in decades, not days. And if nobody else said that, then I'm coining it. My phrase, Scott Schroeder. That's going to be on, somebody's going to quote that one day. Probably not, but at least I will quote it one day. That's someone being me.